If you've been looking at the news for the last few months, you might have noticed the news about China's economy being depleting. The pictures of social unrest and protesting outside the banks and other places too. Pictures are surfaced all over media and news updates. China's population have seen enough, and now they are taking a stand for themselves. Tens of thousands of consumers in China are opting not to make their mortgage payments. Property developers are defaulting on their obligations, and the country's banking system is currently facing enormous monetary strain as a result. A few short months ago, 5 of the most important banks in China were forced to halt withdrawals by customers, which sparked significant demonstrations across the country. Welcome back to Nation's Echo. But how did this economic catastrophe begin in the first place, and how terrible could it get? Let's see it in the video today. China's property prices are decreasing as Beijing reins in the industry, prompting concerns about domestic and global economic development. The Chinese property sector is experiencing a slow-moving catastrophe. As authorities work to rein in excessive debt and market speculation, real estate values have plunged. As developers fail to complete housing developments on schedule, hundreds of thousands of purchasers are refusing to pay their mortgages for pre-sold apartments. With real estate accounting for 15 to 30% of China's GDP, the market's difficulties portend concern for the world's second-largest economy and perhaps global growth as well. But why is China's real estate industry in crisis? China's property woes are a result of purposeful governmental decisions. Beijing implemented a 3 red line strategy in August 2020, intended to gradually deflate a massive property bubble that has been building for decades. The strategy had 2 goals: to reduce the economy's over-reliance on property and to rein in speculation that had driven housing prices out of reach for many Chinese middle-class families. To borrow from banks and other financial institutions, developers were obliged to achieve tight financial health criteria, such as 100% net debt-to-equity ceiling. Many developers, it discovered, had been working far outside the 3 red lines, leaving them with massive debts. The sector faced a serious liquidity constraint when it was suddenly unable to borrow under the new restrictions. Evergrande, one of China's largest developers, defaulted on interest payments owing to its offshore bondholders in December, followed by Cassia Group Holdings shortly after. Property values fell for the 11th consecutive month in July and are down as much as 30% year-on-year. What China is currently suffering is a policy-induced catastrophe, said Gabriel Wildow, managing director of risk research firm Teneo, to Al Jazeera. What I mean is that while people have been warning about a housing bubble for many years, and a good cause, the acute stress that the market is currently under is the direct result of quite harsh lending limits introduced around a year and a half ago. Since then, the sector's problems have worsened as cash-strapped developers have failed to finish projects on time. Protests by buyers of pre-sale houses began earlier this year in the southern city of Jingdezhen and have now expanded to almost 100 localities and 300 homeowners associations. According to Deutsche Bank, the mortgages affected by the boycotts are worth 1.8 to 2 trillion Chinese yuan, around $270 to $300 billion, or around 5% of total mortgage lending. The essence of the problem is that property developers have insufficient cash flows, whether due to debt servicing expenses, low house sales, or misappropriation of money, to continue with projects, said Tommy Wu, lead economist at Oxford Economics earlier this month. Resolving this issue will restore purchasers' trust in developers, therefore supporting house sales and improving developers' financial health. Could this precipitate a worldwide economic downturn? China's property difficulties represent a significant risk to the country's economy, which is already stressed as a result of Beijing's draconian zero-COVID policies and declining global development. According to some estimates, real estate accounts for 30% of GDP, over twice the same percentage in the U.S. While some observers feel the market has bottomed out, the sector's problems are projected to endure for some time. S&P Global Ratings forecast in July that home values would fall 30% this year, a bigger drop than during the 2008 financial crisis. That's simply a massive piece of the economy that's kind of underwater today, Wildow of Teneo explained. I believe that even continuing at our current rate is unsustainable. If this trend continues, growth will be far lower than expected this year. According to Alicia Garca-Herrero, chief Asia-Pacific economist at Natixis in Hong Kong, the global economy is not at high risk of the type of financial crisis sparked by the collapse of Lehman Brothers in the U.S. because Chinese property developers hold relatively small amounts of overseas debt. However, given the size of China's economy, which accounts for over 1/5 of global GDP, a significant slowdown may still have a significant impact on global growth. The worldwide impact is primarily due to China's extremely poor growth. It's not so much a financial impact, Garca-Herrero told Al Jazeera. Of course, if Chinese banks can't handle the shock and their non-performing loans skyrocket, and there's a financial catastrophe in China, which I don't believe will happen right away, it'll be more like Japan in the 1980s and 90s. So, faced with bad debts, little credit, a terrible economy, and deflation, this, I believe, is the scenario, so no immediate layman-style event. According to the World Economic Forum, every percentage point loss in China's GDP leads to a 0.3% decrease in world GDP. According to a 2019 analysis by the U.S. Federal Reserve, an 8.5% reduction in China's GDP would result in a 3.25% drop in advanced countries and a roughly 6% drop in emerging economies. China's economy is unlikely to undergo such a severe economic disaster. Analysts believe it is on pace for a prolonged recession that will impact global development in the coming years. According to Tenio's Wildao, Chinese officials have instruments to forestall a full-fledged financial catastrophe that is not easily available in more capitalistic countries. Chinese authorities wield far more power over the banking sector and the actual economy than U.S. politicians did in 2008. So they have the means to avert a major disaster, he explained. They have the power to prevent financial contagion and a total collapse in credit flows because they can simply compel banks to lend. They can operate outside of the official bankruptcy system to keep everyone liquid and avoid chaotic cycles of default. However, according to Wildao, China might still face years of economic stagnation, which would seem like a recession to many Chinese after decades of rapid development. We may just see a protracted period of slow development, something more akin to a Japan scenario, a type of grinding slowdown over many years, even in the absence of extreme financial hardship or market panic, he added. What is China doing to address the crisis? Despite its goal to lessen the economy's reliance on the sector, Beijing has signaled that sustaining the property market is a vital duty. Officials stated there was a need to stabilize the real estate market at a meeting of China's top decision-making body in July, emphasizing that local governments should take responsibility for ensuring pre-sold properties are completed. Caixin, a Chinese news agency, claimed earlier this month that Beijing was planning to release 200 billion yuan, or $29.3 billion, in loans to finish unfinished housing projects. Beijing has also taken efforts to stimulate the economy more broadly, such as cutting interest rates and expanding stimulus, such as the announcement this week of 300 billion yuan, or $44 billion, in fresh lending through its state-run policy banks. We anticipate that more finance will be secured to help the construction of unfinished dwellings, said Wu, an economist at Oxford Economics, in a note. The statement from the Politburo meeting in July emphasizes the need to stabilize the property market and secure the delivery of dwellings. These initiatives, we believe, are unlikely to come directly from the central government. Instead, authorities would most likely push local governments, banks, and property developers to work together to complete incomplete housing projects. China's measures to support the market may be limited in the end, with Beijing largely anticipated to cling to its 3 red lines and Chinese President Xi Jinping's motto that housing is for living, not speculating. According to Wildao, China's officials are now confronted with the choice of continuing with their real estate crackdown or changing direction for the sake of growth. To begin on a rescue now would be to row back and regress on those advances, he added. It would also be politically inconvenient, since it would appear to be a reversal or acknowledgement of error. As a result, I believe the policy has been somewhat lackluster. We haven't seen the housing rescue that many investors had hoped for. This concludes today's video, but if you enjoyed the video, please like it, and want to see more from us, subscribe to our channel.